I guess one of the points of Marketing 3.0 is we really need to reinvent a new marketing for the times. The old paradigm, if you really analyze it, says that companies aim to maximize profits. Now, that's a very empty statement because it doesn't even say whether they maximize short-run or long-run profits. And to me, the answer is your goal has to be to maximize long-run profits. And even then, it's not very clear how to do it. And it seems to be there is an answer. The way to maximize long-run profits is to maximize the welfare of your stakeholders, not only your owners. Your guidance is to build a team of employees, distributors, and suppliers who are all going to be winners in the marketing of your brand. So we're even changing that concept. Company investors, the old idea was they're the most important people, the investors, because they either give us money to invest with or not. I think they're one of the most important groups, but we have to look at all the stakeholders and not just the owners. Customers buy rationally. This is undergoing a change now. If you look at what's happening to the field of economics, all of the classic assumptions of the rational buyer, the rational company that makes decisions rationally, the rational customer who buys the best products, all of that is being questioned, and the new form of economics is called behavioral economics, which is another word for marketing, by the way. Namely, finally seeing how people actually buy and how producers actually decide instead of assuming everything is rationally driven. And customers get most of their information from sellers, and that has to change. You know, we've already said that. So the new view is that those companies, and it includes some of your own companies, you're operating in a time warp, and you're failing to acknowledge the power of your customers, the power of the channels, and the other stakeholders, and you're not using the new media, and you're not acknowledging the turbulence and all those other things. So marketing must be reinvented, and I'll even say this. Your company needs 2 marketing departments. What do I mean by that? The big marketing department is the one whose job is basically to push out the products you now make, right? In other words, you've got existing products and you want to sell them. And much of the work is to build up advertising campaigns and check the channels of distribution and make sure supplies come in at the right time. That is a lot of work. There's no time in your department to think of the next 3 to 5 years, unless you create a separate department or a separate person. You've got to give 1 or 2 or 3 of your people the assignment, don't worry about selling anything today, because we've got to make products for the future. Help us find out what people will need in their kitchen appliances 3 years from now. What size will the kitchen be? What will be the fabrics that people will be wearing 3 or 5 years from now? So that's what I mean by 2 departments. Don't put everyone in one department that's always under pressure to just sell more of what you're making today. So that's already described. We call it the downstream marketing group, which is the big group, and the upstream marketing group that is thinking of the next 3 to 5 years. Now, it even goes to the idea that maybe in some companies, marketing has attained the status of the growth planner for the company. That is, the marketing group has within it Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs is not the Steve Jobs, but some leader who's like Steve Jobs, who's imagining the products that will be needed even if customers haven't asked for them, and imagining your future. In other words, that marketing would be the energy machine, the growth machine. Now, traditionally, what we really say is marketing should be a member of the strategic planning team, having its influence on growth decisions. And of course, you have to have finance people involved in that, human resource people involved. But more and more, I think that the great companies are almost led by marketing. In fact, Procter & Gamble's famous CEO, A.G. Lafley, said, the whole business is marketing. That's what the business is. And in fact, you may remember the famous remark of Peter Drucker. The only two functions that matter in a company are innovation and marketing. All the rest are costs. Which really means, if you take that literally, if you have strong innovation and strong marketing, you got to be a winner. If you have strong innovation but poor marketing, you're not going to be a winner. If you have great marketing but no innovation, you're not going to be a winner. And the logic follows. So, is your brand working? Now, let me show you levels of achievement. One is that most customers we are going after perceive who we are. There's customer perceived value. They know that what is going to be delivered. Better than that is you actually deliver satisfaction. They go away satisfied. That's the basis of them coming back and buying the next Mercedes or the next product. Now, if you stop there, it's too soon. What you want to do is to build what is called customer advocacy. Customers who care enough about you to talk about you favorably to others. You could call them evangelists. You can call them fans. You can call them enthusiasts. Somehow they really care a lot about you. And there's a technique now that we have to measure it, and it's called the Net Promotion Score, the NPS. Many companies that only used to measure customer satisfaction are now also measuring the Net Promotion Score. I'll tell you how it works very briefly, but you could also go to Google and put in the words Net Promotion Score, and you'll get a full explanation. It was developed by one of our consultants, and he said this: it's the only question you have to ask any of your customers. Question: would you be comfortable telling others about our product? Would you be comfortable, Mr. Customer, recommending our product to others? Now, they use a 10-point scale. If the customer gives it a 10, customer saying, I love your product. Of course, I've been recommending it anyways, without you asking. A 9 would be the customer who says, I've done it occasionally, and of course I'd be happy to do more of it. An 8 would mean, I haven't thought of doing it, but yes, I would be comfortable doing it. All the way down to a 1, which would be the customer who says, I hate you, I will never use your product again, and I'll tell everyone how bad it is. Take the percentage of the customers who gave you a 10, 9, or 8. Subtract the percentage of customers who gave you a 1 through 6. And that net score will correlate with your profitability, says the consultant. That is, companies that have a higher net promotion score in their category will be more profitable, which means more people will be recommending, will be not only satisfied, but recommending that company. Okay? So I like that effort. There's even a higher level that takes place when you say to your customers, we would like you to participate in helping us create tomorrow's products. We would love your ideas on what we could do to twist, turn, touch up our offerings so that they would be exciting to you. And we owe it to the late and great C.K. Prahalad in his book, one of his recent books, to develop this concept of customer co-creation. Now, I want to give you some illustrations, because most companies don't do it yet. One company is Kimberly-Clark. They make baby diapers, among other paper goods and so on. Baby diapers. They just put aside $250,000 that will be given away as prize money to mothers who come up with good ideas on making better diapers, better protection for the children. They call these moms, and any mom who really comes up with a good idea gets $15,000 of the $250,000 for having offered an idea that they're going to probably use and in gratitude. In other words, they've asked the mothers of America to create better diapers for them. You might say, why don't they just have their R&D people do it? Well, it's just that you get a lot of engagement. You know what it's about? Customer engagement. How do you engage people who buy your normal product like diapers to feel engaged with the company? Let me show you how it's done by one more company, but it's in the Doritos. Doritos are a snack food product. Doritos started the contest asking anyone to make a new campaign for Doritos chips. Now, what they knew is that young people like Doritos. Young people are growing up with the internet. They're growing up with YouTube. Many of them can create commercials. So they put aside some money to be awarded to the best commercials made by customers. They were so satisfied that they don't need an advertising agency anymore, because what they were getting in terms of ideas for great commercials, no one agency would have ever, most agencies get locked into sort of one idea, maybe two or three, and then you pick one. Here they had all these Dorito lovers coming out with so many commercials, and of course, the commercials they chose needed a professional touch. So the purpose of the agency was simply to professionalize the delivery of the idea, which was maybe amateurish by the Dorito person. So at the highest level, make your customers a partner in your business. Of course, one of the best things you could do is to build a brand community. And by that we mean a group of people who like to be with each other. They like to, they center on a product or a service. I remember as a young man when I got my first car, which was a Volkswagen. It was that green bug, the Volkswagen, the ugly Volkswagen, the small car. Every time I would pass someone else who had that car, he or I would be first in blowing the horn. It was like, yeah, I'm smart too. I'm buying an inexpensive car, but I'm sensible. It was an expression of my sensibility to buy a transportation that was at a low cost, and it was a community, just like in Harley-Davidson's case. They have built a community. Porsche has built a community. BMW has. Apple has. Lexus. Barnes & Noble. The Body Shop. IKEA. These are companies you know many of them, but they have a following. And if you take Harley-Davidson, you could see they've built a whole group who love the company, and it's called Harley Owners Group. Hogs. Hogs are, it's a funny, pigs and hogs, you don't want to call your group that, but hogs is what they proudly call that group. And they have meetings and socials, and they do good deeds, and they have rallies and anniversaries. They've built a whole, you know what they're selling? They're selling sociability. If you buy any other brand of motorcycle, you have no sociability. They're also selling independence. Because on that Harley, you feel freedom. You feel freedom. They're down to very basic emotions in what they're selling. So the message is, marketing needs to identify the anxieties and the desires of the consumers to be able to reach their minds, hearts, and spirits. And marketing is about clearly defining your unique identity and strength and meeting it authentically with integrity and building a strong image. And practicing what has been called increasingly the triple bottom line, which is creating economic value, environmental health, and social progress. The meaning of marketing under 3.0 is about the marketing of meaning as it is embedded in the corporate mission, vision, and values, and in your DNA, in a sense. And that marketing plays in such companies a stronger role than it has in other companies. And what that really says, and I usually want you to remember this, within 5 years, if you run your business in the same way as you do now, you're going to be out of business. Because you got to change with the changes and so on.
You enter every relationship with a brand, a product, a love mark, somewhere on this love-respect axis. Otherwise, you don't have a relationship, you have a transaction. And there is no money to be made in the transaction business. It's a really easy thing. You can do this for your brands right now, and you don't need any research or any dollars. Intuitively, you know where your brand sits on here. Low love, low respect. Commodities, bottom left. No money. This is where the US airline industry now sits. United, American, Delta, Continental, they are finding it very hard to get out of that commodity pricing, terrible spiral that they're in, and are losing $5 billion. On the right, high love, low respect. Reality TV. Britney Spears, Paris Hilton, Ugg boots, whatever you like. No money to be made. Most successful brands, most of your brands probably sit in the top left. High respect. People trust them, they like them, they understand them, it's good value, but they don't love them. They wouldn't commit suicide if you took them away from them or if it wasn't available. On the top right, high love, high respect. Put your own brands on there, put your competitive brands on there. The only place you make big money is the top right. Remember, brands were only invented for one purpose, and that was to charge a premium. The premium now is shifted to the right. You can do this for anything. Football teams, footballers, hotels, brands, retail, departments. You can put your finance department on there. Commodity, marketing department, love mark. To become a love mark, you need 3 things. 3 secrets. The first one is mystery. The more we know about something, the less interesting it becomes. Any of you that have been married for a long time, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. I see, did somebody tell me Playboy have a stand out here? Yeah? I have a friend of mine in Australia who is a magazine publisher, and they've got a new product out there, and it's Playboy for married men. It has the same centerfold month after month after month after. Mystery, 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 mystery. What was I going to say? Okay, storytelling, right? Mystery. Let's tell great stories. We have so many great stories in our brands that we don't share with people. We're still drowning them with information. People will track with you. They don't have to see the chocolate. They don't have to see the fruit juice, as long as you entertain them. The second of the secrets, sensuality. We feel the world through 5 senses simultaneously. Most brands only operate on 1 or 2. They leave wide open this fantastic emotional spectrum of sight, of sound, of smell, taste, touch. Think about your brand. Think how you can bring all of these into your brand's marketing plan in small ways, because customers and consumers love this stuff. Intimacy is really important, right? So it's mystery, sensuality, and intimacy. Too many times we spend advertising telling people and hammering them with the price, single-minded USPs, repetition. And that's not what people want. People want empathy. Women understand this. Women are experts on intimacy. Men are less less good at this. Men are more into durability, price, functionability. We just did some research. I'm just reading it here because it's quite funny. 63% of women find it sexy when their partners cook, compared with 33% finding it sexy when partners pay for dinner. You'd know if that was true. 2/3 of women find it sexy if their husband cooks. Make a note of that, guys. Girls, make a note of this. Nearly half of men would give up sex for 6 months in exchange for a 50-inch plasma TV to watch the World Cup on. Look for mystery, sensuality, and intimacy. You don't get taught that in the marketing masters, but it's what counts. 7th idea, I've been talking a lot of people about price because obviously people have less money to spend nowadays. But the consumer is taking a different view on price. She said, I am refusing to compromise on quality of life. Price is important, but value is more important. And even more important than that is priceless value. What does Pampers offer more than Huggies? Not in price or performance. What is the priceless value that I get if I choose to use Pampers, is what she's asking. You go home tonight and write down the priceless value that your brand offers. How do you reframe your proposition to price it? We handle a brand for Novartis called Voltaren. And Voltaren is all about pain relief. It relieves pain. It's come under a lot of attack lately from people who claim to relieve pain faster, cheaper, longer. And it's just become a dogfight of comparative claims, counterclaims. And the consumer's going, pfft. So we reframed the Voltaren idea away from pain relief to promise the joy of movement. The joy of movement. And consumers said, wow, pain relief, I understand what that's worth. The joy of movement, man, flexibility, that's priceless. Simple reframe. Nothing happened to the product, nothing happened to the packaging. But we had a revelation that joy and movement was more positive than talking about pain. Priceless value is sitting there in your brands now, believe me, and it is surprisingly obvious. Consumers love to be surprised with the obvious. Sight, sound, and motion. We live in this wonderful area now where we are all screenagers. Every one of you out there has got your screens with you, your mobiles here. We're living in a world, a family of screens. TV is not dead. TV has never been more important. It's never been more big. It's never been more exciting. You're not going to watch Mexico play Brazil in the final on your iPhone. You're going to watch it on a big 50-inch screen, even if it means giving up sex for 6 months. So let's get creative on these screens. Right now, most of the stuff you see on the internet's garbage. Most of the stuff on mobiles is garbage. It is an amazing, amazing opportunity to work on this in this theater of screens. When you check out your advertising, you only need to ask 3 questions. First question, do you want to see it again? Most of the advertising on air, I don't want to see again ever. Ever, ever, ever. And you think somehow you can bludgeon the consumer into submission. Do you want to see it again? And you know the answer to that. You don't have to go and do a lot of research. You know. Yes, it's on strategy. Yes, it's on brief. Yeah. Yes, it has all. Do you want to see it again? Second question is, do they want to share it? Because when you see the Swagger Wagon like that, that went out to 3 million people overnight. Boom, boom. Nobody could keep it to themselves. It just passes, passes, passes. And the third question you want to ask in today's age, do you want to improve it? Just like you saw the gorilla ad for Cadbury's, do you want to do something with Simon Cowell? Do you want to do something crashing? Do you want to improve it? Because you have all, do you want to get involved, in other words? Do you want to participate? Get rid of all the research money. Just ask those 3 questions. That's all you need really to ask about. I'm going to end with sort of 10 E's that I think of underpin everything I've been saying today to really help make things happen when you go out. And the first E is execution. We have to fail fast, learn fast, fix fast. This is not the time for talking, for meeting, for discussing, for studying. It's time to execute. Get out. The consumer's ahead of us. She's moved. Get to work. Second E, enthusiasm. We talked about this quietness and this business conservatism. Great creativity doesn't come from that. Creativity comes from enthusiasmo, the Greek enthusiasm. When you go out of here, you must become an irresistible force of nature. When you get back into your office tomorrow, the place should tremble with your creativity and dynamism. Be exuberant. Be noisy. Make noise. Let them know you've just spent a load of money at this last HSM conference and you've learned a lot of stuff and you're different and things are going to change. And they're going to change now. We're going to have more fun. There's going to be more joy, responsibility, learning, recognition, joy. Woo! It's going to be great. Empower people. None of us are as good as all of us. As soon as you get in, give people responsibility, give them learning, give them recognition, give them joy, support them, coach them, nurture them, play with them. Fantastic. None of us are as good as all of us. Be edgy. I come from New Zealand. We live at the edge of the world. All progress in biology comes from the edge of a species. It doesn't come up from the middle. You live on the edge of the America. You live on the edge of Latin America. Come on. Be edgy, be brave, be colorful, be Mexican for God's sake. Be engaged. I talked about Tom Peters before, 1982, In Search of Excellence, management by walking around. You do not inspire your people, you do not inspire customers or consumers sitting in your office. Get out, throw it away, walk around, get out there, create a difference. And importantly, be enraged, be pissed off. Be really pissed off. The way we do business here is wrong. It's too slow. It's too conservative. It's too traditional. Be pissed off about it and change it. Otherwise, your competitor will. Empathy, you got to be like me. Care about people. Lovely. Because if you care about them, whether they're consumers, customers, or your own people, and you inspire them, they will perform beyond your dreams. Create experiences. Those 4 things are the critical experiences: responsibility, learning, recognition, and joy. Give that to everyone you touch tomorrow and make sure your boss gives it you. We're ready for responsibility. We must have learning every day. We must be recognized for our efforts. We must be given unconditional love and support. And God damn it, we better find joy and have fun in our work. And above all, let your emotions rip so that together everyone can make things happen.
if you want to have impact or results, you need to put hot triggers in the path of motivated people. Boom, there you go. I wished I had I started studying this area in 1993, a long time ago. This phrase didn't come together for me until about a year ago. And I didn't come perfect, and I revised it, and once I had it, it was like, that's it. That's the Holy Grail. That's the secret sauce of persuasive technology. Wow, okay, now what? Well, there's a lot more to do. I'm going to explain some about triggers and what I mean by a trigger. What's interesting about triggers, and we've had triggers for thousands of years, but nowadays the triggers more and more are not coming from broadcast media. They're not coming from brands. They're coming through our friends, through our social networks, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or email, and especially when lots of our friends say, hey, we're going to this event, why don't you go? It ends up being a very compelling way to get our attention and to trigger us. So this is the winning solution. Notice how more and more these triggers are coming through people we know. That's becoming more important. And the triggers that are coming through the traditional broadcast routes are getting less important and less effective. I see two types of triggers, and this is fairly new work. Cold trigger is a call to action that somebody cannot do right now. Like if I said, hey, I want tacos for dinner, get me tacos for dinner. You can't do that right now because it's not dinner time. That's a cold trigger. Or if I'm looking in a magazine and I see a really cool sleeping bag that I want for a camping trip, say I'm on the plane going home, it's like, oh, that's a great sleeping bag. It might be saying buy the sleeping bag, but I can't do it on the plane, right? It's a cold trigger. In contrast, hot triggers are calls to action that I can do right now. So here's the winning solution. Technology can do this in new ways, and that's part of what's been exciting in looking at this. For example, Facebook. In the earlier story where Facebook was triggering me and millions of others to go back into the Facebook experience, to connect to friends, to join a group, and so on. Twitter is basically a channel for hot triggers. When they started Twitter, that really wasn't the intent, but it evolved that way, and I think most, or at least many sophisticated users of Twitter use it as a way to say, here's this link, click here. That's a hot trigger, and it's right in my feed, and if I'm interested, I have the ability to click that and get right to whatever that web page or video or whatever it is. YouTube, or online video in general, is more and more becoming a channel for hot triggers as they can embed links or put links very close to the video. Notice this pattern, and I probably won't talk about it later in the presentation, but I taught a whole class at Stanford on persuasive video. How do you create online video to persuade, to get results, to change behaviors? And one of the formula was to have a video and very close to it have a call to action with something they could actually do. Sign up, tell a friend, post it to Facebook. So it's that combination. The video would be short and meaningful, and right there they would have a hot trigger next to the video. Now we have other technology channels that may not seem as sexy, but they're still very effective. Email. Email is a channel for hot triggering, and very exciting, mobile. It's not quite there yet, at least in the US, but mobile will be the most important channel for changing attitudes, behaviors, getting results, and I'll talk about that more a little bit later. So the way that you would achieve the one-time try my service is very different than how you would get people to stop smoking, for example. You would not use the same methods. And this is where academics and a lot of marketing people, hate to say, and a lot of folks in persuasion mess up. They take a technique from one domain and they try to apply it in a different domain. Let me show you this conceptually what it looks like. So here's our target behavior, and then somebody on the team says, hey, I just read this great book about Alcoholics Anonymous. Let's take this technique from getting people to stop drinking and apply it to getting them to visit our website every day, and so on. So these other systems do not necessarily match with green dot behaviors. But this is where we often make mistakes. And this, I think, was in some ways the real driver to create this system, this chart, because when I'd go out and work with clients, when I'd work with teams, they were getting all confused about, first of all, they couldn't define what behavior they wanted. And then when we got that very clear, they started applying techniques to the behavior that didn't match. It's sort of like, oh, we finally know we want to make a birthday cake. Thank you for helping us figure that out. Oh, let's go get Cajun seasoning because we love Cajun seasoning, and let's put it in the birthday cake because we love Cajun seasoning. Well, you know, it's the wrong ingredient for a birthday cake, usually, unless you're in an unusual place. So I call this problem the catch-up problem. Let's say ketchup, your team loves ketchup. Maybe somebody read a book about ketchup. It's like, awesome, ketchup is really cool and it works in a lot of ways. Somebody spoke at TED about ketchup. Yay. There's a new technology that allows you to use ketchup. Hooray. And so you think ketchup makes everything better, so let's just start putting ketchup into everything we do. Ketchup, ketchup, ketchup. And it's not the right solution. So what you have to understand first, what kind of behavior are we seeking? And I'm hoping that within your team, and this is part of my goal for today, is that you take some rigor, some precision back to the goals that you have, and you talk very concretely with your team. What is it? Are we trying to do a one-time behavior that's new? Or are we trying to get a familiar behavior to happen every single day? And those are different. The second one is called the blue path behavior. And actually, this is my favorite part of the grid, blue path. In fact, I'm teaching a class at Stanford right now on blue path behaviors. How do you achieve these? These are habits, and habits are extremely powerful. Daily visit. For many websites, if you want to succeed, you need people to go to your site every day. In fact, I've been thinking, and I don't have all the data on this yet, but it seems like for almost any consumer product to become a success, whether it's digital or not, it needs to be used daily. So if you don't have something that's being used daily, think, how can we make this a daily part of someone's lives? That's where it becomes very, very powerful. Now, getting to blue path, you can't approach it directly, just like in chess. Think of it like a chess game. In chess, you can't just, one move and say checkmate. You have to go step by step for some of these behaviors, and that is true for most blue path behaviors. You may need to start off with green dot. Come to our site one time, just come once. Then the next step, once you figure out how to do that, then it's like, how do you get them back? You know our site, come back. How do you get them to come back for 2 weeks? We're having this special experience. Come back every day for 2 weeks. And then how do you move that into, oh, now it's, just keep coming back every day. So what I want you to see here is the sequencing here of results. You don't go right for a come back every day because that's very likely to fail. You have to think about it this, then this, this, and this, and map it out and come up with solutions for each one. What's exciting, once you have a blue path behavior, even if it's tiny, let's say you can get somebody to go to your website for 5 seconds every day. If you can do that, I will invest in your company. That's awesome. Because if you can get them to do 5 seconds, you can then move them to purple path. You can expand the 5 seconds to 8 seconds, 10 seconds, 5. That's what Facebook has done. If you look at how much people are on Facebook, it's expanding and expanding. It is much easier to go from blue to purple than to achieve green. So if you've got something that's working in the blue path arena, no matter what it is, find a way to expand that into the next thing that you want. Build on existing behaviors. And what motivates us is mostly the same. Pleasure motivates us, and pain. This is the first big core motivator in my model, pleasure and pain, two sides of the same. It's instant sensation. And it works with your colleagues, people that live in your household, your pets, and so on. Next, hope and fear. Hope and fear are anticipations. Hope is the anticipation of something good happening. Fear is the anticipation of something bad happening. Very powerful motivator. If you think back to the elections that happened over the last, 12 years in the United States, think how much hope and fear was leveraged. At one point, it was fear, 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 fear. And the American people got really tired of that, and guess what message was just perfect? Hope, hope. And that's what won. Next big motivator is a social one. We are just hardwired to belong. We are pack animals. So social acceptance, social rejection, this is a core motivator. Why? You know, why do fish swim? You cannot explain this easily. It's just built into us. We will do things to be accepted. We will do things to avoid rejection. And so when you think about motivation, boom, there you have it. You don't have to read thousands of books. Those are the motivators. And as you think about these specific examples, how do you get people to try my service one time? Which of the motivators do we leverage? How do we get people to come back every day? Which of those motivators do we leverage? How do we get people to eat chips every day? Is it hope? Is it fear? Is it all your friends are doing it? Is it have a contest with your friends, which is a kind of a social acceptance, fear mix, and so on? You can look. This is where I hope we end up when I'm done with this in a few minutes, is you'll be able to look at what's working in the world, like Zynga, Daily Booth, on and on and on. The things that are working, I'm hoping you can look at them and say, okay, what motivators are they hitting on, and how do we do something like that? Okay, so let's move on to motivation. Is that enough? No. In fact, if you use too much motivation, it backfires. The key is actually to use the lightest touch that works. Don't over-motivate. Look at some examples that are pretty clear at this point. eBay used a very simple system to motivate people to be honest. It was, you got a little feedback score. They didn't have to do anything but that. LinkedIn, does this look familiar? Look at that little number. That was the motivational system in LinkedIn. The higher the number, the more I thought I was socially accepted. So they were leveraging the social acceptance piece. But if I only had 2 connections, if you had a friend with 2 connections, it's like, wow, social reject, right? So you didn't want to be that person with 2 connections. LinkedIn didn't have to explain that to you. All they had to do was give you a little teeny number. And if they had made it a big deal, it probably would have backfired, right? Little 2 in your face, they made it a small, subtle thing, but it totally worked. So lightest touch that works. Motivation is the last thing you manipulate. There are 2 things you look at before, and one is to make the behavior easier and triggering, and I'll get to those in a minute. To get behavior to happen, what's more important than motivating is to make it easy to do. So usually when I look at an intervention that's not working, motivation is the last thing I examine. Before that, I look at ability. Okay, you're asking people to donate $1 million. You've got great videos. You've got celebrities. You've got all this motivational stuff going on. But guess what? They can't donate $1 million because they don't have it. You know, so the target behavior has to be something they can do. You've got to trigger the behavior. So there you have it. Here's the model. It's got 3 things: motivation, ability, trigger. All 3 things have to exist at the same moment for the behavior to happen.
And I'm going to talk today about social technologies, how to make sense of them. And there are so many out there. Now, if it was only just about Facebook, for example, it wouldn't necessarily be so bad because they only have 500 million users, right? But it's more than just Facebook. It's a lot more other sites. There are sites like LinkedIn, there are Twitter, YouTube, Flickr, and then it goes on and on. They seem to multiply overnight. It can be very, very overwhelming. So that's kind of understandable to see there are so many that you have to keep a track of. But more importantly, in talking to business leaders like yourselves, I hear this other comment from people, this feeling, this fear of being out of control. And in particular, what I hear from people is, well, what happens when somebody writes a negative comment about me? What happens if they put up a negative customer experience? What if they put up pictures of things going wrong with my product? Well, that's exactly what happened with Dell. One day, 4 years ago, something happened to one of their products, and I hope nothing like this ever happens to you. But this is the picture that started circulating around the internet. It was one of their laptops catching on fire, spontaneously combusting and blowing up in the middle of a conference in Osaka, Japan. They weren't in control of that situation, were they? So what happens in this age and space where, frankly, you're not in control? And in fact, what Dell did, what they realized they had to do was to really respond. And they had just, at that very summer in 2006, started a blog. The chief blogger, Lionel Menchaca, sat down and he had to figure out what was he going to say about this. I mean, what do you say about something that looks like that? So this is what he wrote. I'm going to show you the post. It looks something like this. It just had a simple title. It says, Flaming Notebook. Make no mistake about it, what he was going to talk about. And this is what he wrote. Beyond what you've seen in the blogosphere, we don't have an update on the infamous Flaming Notebook from Osaka. And he links to that picture that I showed you just now. Can you imagine doing that in your own company? Putting up something for the world to see and say, hey, here's our product blowing up on your own website. Well, Lionel didn't just stop there. He said, you know, if we're going to talk about this, we're going to really carry it all the way through. So over the course of that summer and that fall, he wrote 12 different blog posts talking about what they were finding out, that in fact it was something wrong with the batteries, that they were going to have to replace every single lithium-ion battery in all of their computers. This is the process that we're going to talk about. This is the way that we're going to do this, they said. And what Lionel did also, as people were writing back, angry customers, one by one, he was writing back to them and saying, I hear you, we're sorry this is happening, but this is what we're going to do about it. Person by person, he responded to all of those comments. Person by person, he reached out to them and said, this is what we're going to do for you. In the course of doing this, Dell also worked with their customer service people. And they said, when people called into the call centers or sent emails, they would point them back to all of these blog posts for them to get more information, get more in-depth explanations about what to do about that battery replacement. Now, when Dell started doing this and creating the strategy, they didn't think about, oh, here's my blogging strategy, this is what I can do with it. What they set out to do, and why Michael Dell absolutely believed that this is the way to do it, is that they were focused on something different. They were focused on relationships. And in particular, they realized what these technologies do better than anything else that's out there, and that is being able to reach out to people, being able to create new relationships where one didn't exist before, or to be able to strengthen the ones that were already there. So if you think about what Dell did, what they did was they said, this is a relationship worth having with people. A conversation around their laptops blowing up, being able to have an authentic and transparent relationship with them. Now, I want you to think about what relationships mean in the course of business and also in your personal lives. Now, think about your best relationships that you have in your personal life. Let's think about with your spouse or partner. How many of you would say that you control them? Anybody want to admit that? Okay, so a point made. You can't control relationships. And yet when it comes to business, why do we think that we can control things? Because in the world of business, it really is about relationships. And yet in this space, in this world of social technologies, you have to realize that you have to absolutely give up control. And that is the hardest thing in the world to do because you feel you have to control things to get things done, right? Well, I'm here to tell you something very differently. In this world, what you have to do is to figure out how to give up control, but still be in command. Because command is what you do when you're in business, when you're a leader. You have to make sure that this is the direction that we're going to march in. We're going this way. Everybody, we're going to march this way, and you're going to follow me. I command that we go this way. But you don't control people to go in that direction. The only way you can get people to go in that direction is to inspire them. You have to lead them, and you have to have a relationship with you. Now, there was a whole balcony of bloggers up at the top. They're blogging, they're tweeting away at this. They are leaders. Why is that? Because they have people following what they're saying. People are following them right now. The definition of a leader is a follower. So how do you actually lead in this new world with these social technologies? How do you create strategies around them? I'm going to talk to you about 3 ways to actually do this, how to be successful in doing that. In those 3 ways around this, we're going to talk about strategy, how to have a goal, how to be a leader, and then how do you prepare. So the first one, I want a strategy. First of all, you can't have a strategy around Facebook or Twitter. It's kind of like saying, let's have a strategy around our phone system or around your email system. These are tools and communication channels that you can use to apply. So let's take a look at how one company actually applied and created a strategy, and that's Best Buy. Now, what Best Buy did is they figured this is going to be a great way for us to connect to our customers. And not by directly, we're going to create a social network inside the company so they could talk to these folks, the blue shirts, the people who work in the stores at the front lines. And so what they did is they started connecting to people so people could talk to each other between stores, between departments, between regions, and also between the front lines and the people back at corporate. Now, one of those people who wrote back and forth and started really delving deeply into these new relationships was the CMO of Best Buy, Barry Judge. And he was writing internally, communicating with people, because for the first time, he could peek in and learn what was going on in the minds of customers directly from the people who were interacting with them. He didn't have to wait for all the feedback from his marketing campaigns to figure out what was working. He got instant feedback. So he could learn. That was a key objective for him. And he also put in his office one of these big screen TVs so that he could track all the comments that people were saying on blogs, on discussion forums, and on Twitter. He could see what people were saying about the brand Best Buy. Well, one of the things he decided at an early point was that maybe it was time for him to actually talk with customers directly. So he decided to write a blog. But if any of you have ever thought about writing a blog, the thought of it is really terrifying because you're putting yourself out there. Who knows what people were going to say back to him? Were they going to criticize him? He was putting his thoughts, his ideas out for anybody else to respond. So he took a deep breath, he sat down, and he wrote his first blog post. And I just wanted to share it with you because it's very meaningful. This is what he wrote. It's the first post, just 10 words. Here it is, the first post. Phew, glad that's over. Now, some of you may be thinking about this and go, well, that's not a very inspiring first post, but it's such a huge step. And I don't want to underplay this because for many businesses, taking that first step out to be able to share, to give up that control, the thought that you could even be in control, is a monumental step forward. For Barry, what he did then was really discover his voice. He figured out this is the way that he could communicate with people. He started talking about decisions he was making, agency choices, tagline choices, asking people for advice on what he should be doing as a CMO. And he got great feedback. But one day he was in his office and he was looking at that big screen TV. And he saw all of a sudden all these bad comments going by. And he said, something's wrong. It was his early warning system. He ran over to his department and said, what's up? It turned out they had sent out a test promotion saying to people, welcome, you're part of this new VIP club. Please sign up and you'll be a member of this new email newsletter. They intended to go out to 1,000 people, test subjects. Unfortunately, it went out to 6.8 million people. So, of course, what do? They sent out another email saying, sorry, you're not a VIP to those 6.8 million people. So at that point, you can imagine people were thinking, what am I? I'm not a VIP? Am I not important to Best Buy? So Barry sits down, they figure out what they're going to do about this, and then he sits down to write a blog post, and this is what he wrote. He wrote, this is what happened, and I am just sick to my stomach thinking about the customer trust that we just wrecked. This is what we're going to do about it, but it doesn't feel like it's enough. What more should we be doing? Barry laid it out there. He started with this one simple blog post of 10 words to feeling comfortable, having the type of relationship with his customers that he could say this to them, having that personal type of relationship. Now, that says something about being able to say with great confidence and with great humility, being able to admit that you're wrong. that you could do better, and asking in the trust in the relationship with your customers to help you to get to that point. Now, Best Buy realized the power of these new types of relationships. So they went through this process of 18 months to determine what their open and social strategy would be like. And one of the things they did was this past summer was to start a new site on Twitter. This is what it looks like. It's called 12 Force. And any of you can go and ask a question about electronics on this site. Now, when you do that, you'll get an answer back from one of 2,400 employees. Any employee inside of Best Buy can answer questions on Twitter. So last fall, I asked a question. I asked, I'm looking for a smartphone for my son, but I want to make sure it has parental controls. What phone should I get? And somebody from Best Buy, one of the employees, those blue shirts, writes back to me and says, you should get an Android phone. And in fact, I'm going to be at your local store, your local Best Buy store, because I have my location turned on. Why don't you and your son come by Saturday afternoon and we can look at the phones together? I was astounded by that. That somebody, an employee, would take it upon themselves to reach out to me, not somebody in corporate marketing in a social media group, but an everyday employee had it in themselves to reach out to me. Now, you may look at this example, and you may be absolutely inspired by the thought that any of your employees could have that kind of relationship with your customers. Or you might be absolutely terrified that they could do this. Now, the difference between being inspired and terrified is my next subject. It is really around the whole area of leadership. And I think we have to rethink the way leadership is defined. Because leadership, again, is much more than just being in a particular spot on that organization chart. It is about what you do with the level of influence you have now, not the amount of control you have, but the influence you have, because anybody can be influential with these tools. So here's an example. If you look at what Salesforce has been doing, they've been putting out this new product that's like a Twitter that you can use inside the organization. And in particular, what they did is they created a whole group of people inside the organization called the Chatterati. So if you look at the screenshots here, one of the things they do is actually have ways that they can go and connect with people. And so when they come and talk to people, they actually invited all those leaders into the annual leadership meeting inside of Salesforce. And what Mike Benioff at the end of that meeting said, you know, the reason I invited these people is because these 25 Chatterati, as they're called, actually are the connective tissue inside the organization. And he gave me this quote afterwards. He imagine that Chatterati actually creating just as much value as somebody who was an SVP over here in marketing or in sales or in customer service. That person should probably be paid and compensated in a way that's similar to the value that these SVPs are created. And that's revolutionary. Because now what you're saying is the value being created in the company isn't just by somebody in the organization chart, but it's by somebody who's able to be the connective tissue, breaking down the silos, flattening the hierarchy, enabling people to get real work done. Inside of Salesforce, these Chatterati are being promoted. They're being the ones who are focused on to say you are, in many ways, the leadership of the organization. That's the reason why Mark Benioff brought them to the leadership meeting, because he realized that in order to achieve his strategic goals, he had to point his executives in this direction, but he also needed to put and point these key people, people who were dictating the dialogue, into this direction too as well. So when you think about what leadership means in this new space, it's not only about being able to set the direction, but also to inspire people again, to move in that direction. It's about the relationships you can form. And if many of your organization's employees, let's say on the younger side of 40, are using these tools to connect with each other, how are you inserting yourself into those conversations? Do you look at that and say, that's a young person's game? That's something I can ignore safely. I can go over there. I'm just going to stick with my traditional way of communicating with people. Let's say it's called email, which is flat, non-conversational, versus being able to connect with them and also with your customers through this much more interactive space that develops relationships. I think what you need to do is maybe change your mindset. Mindsets change slowly over time, but think about the new skills and behaviors you're going to have to learn to adopt. And not because it's the new shiny object that's out there, but because people are using these tools to get real work done.